In this video I want to deep dive into the camera system of the brand new iPhone 12 Pro Max, and this is by far the largest iPhone Apple ever brought to market. 6.7 inches diagonal, and what caught my attention most when I unboxed it was the camera system here with these huge lenses. And if we put them in perspective with the 11 Pro Max, you see how much larger these lenses actually are. And the general rule of thumb is if you have bigger lenses, very likely you will catch more light and you will also have better images. That's in general true, not always true. If you go into the Leica M series camera system, you find a lot of lightweight, compact, small lenses which are nevertheless fast and provide excellent image quality. And in consistence with that experience is also the Leica camera system built into Huawei smartphones. So this is the Huawei P40 Pro Plus. It has much smaller lenses, but nevertheless is an excellent camera system. And there are lots of videos on my channel where you can look this up and compare, my impressions of Huawei smartphones with other smartphones. Another smartphone which caught my attention with its lenses in the same way is the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. And this is the largest camera module we've ever seen on Samsung smartphones. It's also sticking out a little bit, and these lenses are large, but not as large as the ones from the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And people following me on my channel, they know I complained a lot about the S20 Ultra from Samsung. Here I think with the Note 20 Ultra, Samsung did everything right. This is by far, in my opinion, the best Android smartphone for photographers currently available in the market. Now let's focus completely on the 12 Pro Max. I will share lots of sample images and videos, will basically also comment, will also tell people what I don't like. But that almost all the time has to do with the native camera app here, where you still have a lot of restrictions and you don't get the same level of freedom or degree of flexibility as you sometimes have it on native camera apps on Android smartphones. Let's kick off the video now. Before looking into live shooting and samples of photos and videos in the night mode, let's have a first look what this camera system is made of in the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And first of all, we have a 47% larger sensor and we have a larger pixel size. We also have image stabilization based on sensor shifts, and that's something we know from professional system cameras, for instance from Sony, Leica, Nikon and Canon, and is called in-body image stabilization on these cameras. Besides the LiDAR scanner, we have three main camera modules here, and the first one is a 12 megapixel wide-angle lens. It has an equivalent of 26mm focal length. If we compare this with a full-frame sensor, it's a 7-element lens, it has a large pixel size, and this image stabilization we just saw in that sensor shift technology. And the aperture is fixed at f1.6. Everything you are seeing on that phone in terms of wider or more closed aperture is software simulation and is not related to the optical properties of that lens. Next we have an ultra-wide camera, also 12 megapixels. Aperture is now at f2.4. 5 elements in the lens, and the full frame equivalent focal length is 13 millimeters, and we have a very wide field of view here of 120 degrees. Last but not least, we have a telephoto module with 12 megapixels, and this is a full frame equivalent focal length of 65 millimeters. Now, if we think about that for a moment, wide angle was 13 millimeters. 13 millimeters times 5 equals 65 millimeters, which is the focal length of that telephoto lens. And that means all in, the iPhone 12 Pro Max has a 5 times optical zoom. DxOMark already tested the iPhone 12 Pro Max and came up with an overall score of 130 for camera. And if you look in the smartphone ranking on the left hand side of what's in display in front of you, you see that the iPhone 12 Pro Max is ranking at number 4 currently. Number 5 is the iPhone 12 Pro, so not a big difference. All the other phones are from Chinese manufacturers, but Apple made it into the top rankings with their new phones. The user interface of the native camera app as it is shipped by Apple is minimalistic and has the usual suspects on it. You have here the time-lapse function. The time-lapse function is now nicely working at night and in low light conditions, and I'm going to demonstrate this in the course of the video. It's very nice that Apple included a night mode for time lapses. You have on the slow motion different parameters to set in. You can do this directly on the screen here, so I can change here from 240 to 120 and back to 240 frames per second. It's full HD, so 1080p, not a 4K video yet on slow motion as you find it on some of other manufacturers' phones. On the video mode, also you can change this here, 24, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second. You can switch from 4K to HD. That's all nice and all possible. And you can also change this in the settings of the camera, which I'm going to cover in just a few seconds in a moment. The photo app is for photography, coming from the wide angle 13mm up to 2.5 times optical zoom on the telelens, covering a range of 5 times overall optical zoom on the whole camera system. As I mentioned before, what is nice, you can also use a digital zoom here, so I can go up to 12 times digital zoom, which is only 10 times on the iPhone 12 Pro, but on the Pro Max you can go up to 12 times, which is nice. So that's basically what I wanted to share here. The portrait mode is working in the same way as before. You have different settings on the right hand side, and you can also change the software simulated. That's important, the software simulated aperture here. That is all nice and all working. So you get your background more blurry, but this is just a digital simulation here. Is not a true aperture, which is opened more as you would find it on, let's say, professional camera. And then we have the panorama mode, which is going beyond 60 megapixels if you do it rightly. And that is also something which is nice. Now, if we go into the camera menu, on the settings, we actually have here all kinds of things to change. So you can change your video formats in the way which you can also switch them in the native camera app graphical user interface. There are a few things to note here. First of all, what I deactivated here is Smart HDR. If you have Smart HDR deactivated, you actually see in the native camera app an HDR button, and then I can manually control whether I want to have this or not. So it's just here. Now HDR is basically deactivated and now it is activated, and I think that's a much better way of dealing with it. There would be many things to say about the camera app itself, but also about the settings, but that's not what this video is about. So let's move on now to my live shooting demonstrations and sample images and sample videos, and let's have a look how fantastic this phone is working in its night mode. The night mode of the iPhone 12 Pro Max is still restricted to 30 seconds as a maximum, and if you hit the soft shutter button, it starts to count down these 30 seconds, as you can see on the right hand side. I accelerated this here and the results were absolutely mind-blowing. This is an image from the wide angle lens with light trails from cars and trucks passing by, and clearly a nice shot, very clear, very crisp. And this is a shot with the main lens of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and I think this looks really, really good. On our way back, stopping by and taking images over Lake Zurich also revealed a very clear, crisp night sky and nice lights from the cities around the lake. At the night of my shooting, it was a very clear night sky, and you could even see the Milky Way indicated in the images here. And then I mounted the iPhone on a tripod and just pointed it towards the sky above me, and I found this, which is by far the best Milky Way picture I've ever taken with a smartphone. I tweaked this a little bit in post-processing in Lightroom, but in general that's what the iPhone camera sensor has seen and provided to me in terms of an image. Turning our attention to more normal shooting situations for the night mode in cities, for instance, this is an image from Bahnhofstrasse in Zurich, and the clarity and crispiness of that image, the sharpness, and of course also the low noise level is just fantastic. The time-lapse mode of the new iPhone also has a night mode now, and what you see here is a screen recording, and it looks as if every single frame would get blurry based on the low light environment. But that's by far not the case, and I'm going to show you now a time-lapse which was completely conducted only on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Enjoy the show. The portrait mode now also has a night mode, and you see here a screen recording from a test shooting of my model here, and I should say it works very well, and you can also choose these different lighting modes on the right hand side and then get completely different results. Very promising, very good. The portrait mode delivers nice images with a nice tone of the skin and a nice background blurriness depending on what f-stop in the software simulation you're setting up. And the special light effects you can choose on the right hand side of your settings also provide interesting optionality. All in, very good results on the new Portrait Night mode. Just as a side remark, I also experimented with the new Portrait Night mode on non-human targets or subjects, and this is a photo taken through the window of a shop in Zurich where I applied the Portrait Night mode to this bird on display, and the result is quite nice. The background blurriness kicked in depending on the f-stop settings in the software simulation, and then I also applied one of these lighting conditions filters on the right hand side, and the resulting images were almost a little bit spooky or scary. Coming back to video, the video night mode works fantastic. It's always crisp, clean and almost noise-free footage you get here. Looks very nice, and video stabilization when you walk with your phone is also, I think, just fantastic. And you see this even better when we change the perspective to the streets here, and you can clearly see how the iPhone 12 Pro Max is stabilizing my movements with the phone in my hand. Slow motion also works with a night mode now, and this is a 1080p video in slow motion now. Worked very well, was shot handhold and very well video stabilized from the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And in general, nice effects you can achieve with the slow motion mode on this new iPhone here. Clearly the iPhone also performs very well in better lighting conditions. This is a shot early morning somewhere in Canton Schwyz in the mountains. Just very nice, very sharp, very crisp, and in general also nice from the colors. And I think the iPhone 12 Pro Max is getting very close to what we would call a professional camera system, and is all built into a smartphone, of course. The way the iPhone was replicating this early morning light over the mountains was exactly what I saw in front of my eyes. Very natural color reproduction. And the level of detail we get from the sensor combined with the substantially larger lenses now, as I pointed out at the beginning of this video, is just incredible. A little later then, the fog started to rise up from the valley towards the sky, and I decided to do a panorama shot which has a very high resolution now, and I think also here the images look very good. Seeing the fog rising, I decided for a time lapse. Enjoy the show. Going back to the beginning of this video, when we had these 4 top-notch flagship smartphones on the table, I come to the following conclusion. In my many reviews on smartphone photography, on Android phones, but in particular on Huawei phones, people very often heard me saying, for instance, when I spoke about the Huawei P40 Pro Plus, these are the best camera systems in the smartphone world, but I will always keep my iPhone because it has also a good camera system, and most importantly, I'm sitting with my content in the Apple ecosystem, and that's why I always will have an iPhone because of my notes, my music, my TV shows, my videos and all of that. With the iPhone 12 Pro Max, this game changed. This phone I want to have primarily because of its camera system, and as a secondary reason I need to have it because I'm sitting in the Apple ecosystem. So the iPhone 12 Pro Max, in my opinion, is a real game changer. And you might argue there are changes here and there which are gradual, but in general I think the overall package, the value proposition, is something of the best in terms of smartphones you can get going into 2021. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching and peace out.